Hey everyone, welcome back to this episode of Home Built Workshop. Today, I'm going to replicate this bass guitar neck. Now this guitar neck is off of a project that a friend of mine is working on converting an old, I think 60s or 70s era bass guitar into a fretless bass. Now the fretboard has been removed on this. This neck actually did not have a truss rod. It had some sort of rods in here just to stiffen up the neck. So those have been already removed and the channel has been filled. Now originally he wanted me to just make the fretboard, but after looking at this neck, it's really rough. So I think we can do a little bit better and come fairly close to this same style. I looked around at some of the material that I have on hand. I have this piece of maple here. This end has some nice quilting on it. I might try to make sure that that is the headstock and the quilting is not as pronounced down here. That's not a big deal. I think once I get everything cut that I can get a fretboard and the neck out of this same piece. With the neck roughed out, I'm going to move on and get the fretboard prepared. I'll straighten one edge with a hand plane. I'm just checking it with a straight edge. That's pretty close. Now I can rip it down to size on my table saw. This piece is kind of a weird shape, but as long as I pay attention to what I'm doing, it'll cut down fine. So now I've got my fretboard blank all squared up and roughly to size, still a little wide. I'm gonna need to trim that down later, but right now I need to get this resawed. So to do that, I'm gonna mark the center with my marking gauge. I like to go back down that line with a pencil and darken that line in just a little bit so that it makes it easier to see when I'm resawing it on the bandsaw. Next, I'll run the pieces through my planer and bring them down to the correct thickness. I'll use one blank for this project and I'll have a spare already milled up for the next one. So now I'm going to take some careful measurements so that I can mark out a center line where I'm going to cut the slot for the truss rod. Now using my router and a straight cutting spiral bit, I'll just route a groove that's 3/8 of an inch deep. This is the first major project since I built this new tabletop, and already I am loving the T-track. Just being able to quickly clamp a workpiece in place is really cool. So now I've got a nice straight channel to accept the truss rod. Before we can glue the fretboard on, I need to drill a recess to accept the end of this truss rod. Now the truss rod has this little rounded portion, and that's where you make your adjustments. I need to cut a recess into the neck that matches this. To do that, I have this reamer made specifically for this purpose. It has a nice long shank that helps guide it and keep the bit straight as it rides in the slot, and then this little cutter that will cut that perfect shaped recess. All I need to do is install a filler strip that will hold the bit nice and straight as I drill. And what we're left with is a nice rounded recess in the perfect position for that truss rod. Before you apply some glue, depending on what truss rod you're using, you may need to apply a little bit of tape along the top of the truss rod. You don't want glue to get on the truss rod and glue itself to the neck. However, this is a double action truss rod, and this one comes with a shrink wrap coating all the way around. The shrink wrap is isolating the truss rod from the wood, so if I do get a little bit of glue in there, it's not going to glue the truss rod and make it stick to where it won't work correctly. I am not going to apply tape to this, but if you're using an open truss rod, you may want to look at applying some tape to that slot when you are applying the glue so you don't get any glue down in there. I'm not worried about it. But since I'm not worried about the glue getting in there, doesn't mean I'm just going to go crazy with the glue. I'm trying to be careful and make sure I have an even coat, and I'm trying to keep any puddles away from the center of the neck. That way when I clamp this down, it doesn't squeeze, or at least too much of it doesn't squeeze out into the truss rod. Now I'll drill some small pilot holes for the tuners. I'm not going to drill them to the final dimension yet because I'm not 100% sure what kind of tuners are going to go back on this neck. So I want to jump in really quick. I need to give a huge shout out to Greg. In a previous video, Greg had seen where I was using my belt sander upside down and I had it clamped to the bench and doing some sanding. He told me a story where he had his come undone one time and it went flying around the shop. Greg said he recently upgraded his sander and he had this sander sitting in his shop collecting dust. Greg shipped this to me as a gift. Man, how awesome. Greg, thank you so much. I've already gotten good use just on this guitar neck out of this sander. It's so much easier to use than a belt sander clamped to your work table. Thanks so much, man. I appreciate it so much. What an awesome community that we're a part of, where people can do that and contact people out of the blue. I don't know Greg or anything. He doesn't know me. So awesome to do that. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I want to encourage you guys, if you have some tools laying around the shop that you don't use anymore, offer it up to somebody that you might know that could use it. And it's a great way to clean some things out of your shop and also put some things to good use to some other people. So look around your shop, see what you got. Again, thank you, Greg. Man, I appreciate it so much. Awesome, buddy. Thank you. Now let's jump back in and get this neck done. We're that close. Well, after several hours of sanding, this thing's starting to feel really nice. I've got it sanded up to 220. I'm going to take it up a little bit higher, but first I'm going to put a radius in the fretboard. I'm going to use this radius sanding block. This one has a 12-inch radius. It's going to sand a 12-inch radius in the top of the neck. Now, sanding a radius by hand is no joke. It is a lot of work and takes quite a lot of time. It would have went a bit quicker had I started with a coarser grit of paper, but I was erring on the side of caution as I didn't want to go too far, too fast. But now I know that next time I can start off with a lot coarser sandpaper. Well, that was a lot of sanding. It feels really nice. Now I'll drill a couple of tiny pilot holes to attach the neck to the body. And for the finish, I'm just going to apply several coats of clear lacquer. Wow. That's cool. Once that lacquer's cured, this thing is ready to finish being assembled. Now there's a few things left to do yet that my friend is going to do. The holes that need to be drilled to the proper size for the tuners. I do have the pilot holes to give him a good location. Also, the nut slot will need to be fine-tuned to fit the nut that's going to go back on, but it is there, and all he'll need to do is enlarge that to fit whatever size the nut is, just with a file. He'll be able to widen that out. And we will eventually put some fret position markers on the side, but once we get it together and get everything intonated and he finds out kind of where everything is going to work, then we'll mark those and install them. And then once all that's done, I may apply another coat of lacquer just to seal all those markers and stuff in. Not sure if we're going to put anything on the top of the fretboard as far as markers. Mainly, this project was just to get the neck built so that he can get the neck and body and everything reassembled and the guitar up and running, and we'll go from there kind of as to what we need to do. But my portion right now is complete. What do you guys think? Is it an improvement? I hope so. It feels really good to me. It's kind of hard to imagine how this is going to play without any strings on it, but it feels really good. Plus I'm left-handed, so trying to hold the guitar neck this way is very strange to me. I want to hold it this way, to which it feels pretty decent. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I'm excited to get this together and see how it works out. So again, starting with this old crusty neck with no fretboard and no truss rod, we duplicated that into a nice quilted maple neck with a quilted maple fretboard, and it has a truss rod. It's gonna rock. So guys, let me know down in the comments below what you thought of this build, and give me some tips and tricks. And maybe you noticed something that I could have done a little easier. Those of you maybe that have more experience with installing truss rods and stuff than I do, let me know what I did wrong, what I did right. I welcome that feedback. I learned from you guys. You guys are awesome and super helpful, and I welcome that kind of feedback. So let me know down below. So I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and give it a big old thumbs up. I definitely would appreciate it. Also, if you know somebody else that may enjoy this kind of content, go ahead and share this video on your social media or email or whatever you feel like, but I definitely would appreciate that if you help share it and spread the word. Speaking of social media, down in the description you'll find links to all my social media sites where we can connect and have some conversations over there. So if you're interested, look it up and connect with me over on some of those networks over there. I'm on several of them, so hit me up if you want. If you don't want, that's cool. You don't have to, but the links are down below. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody, and we'll see you next time. So don't forget, I have a lot of other videos, some of which you'll find links to right here. You can also subscribe to my channel right here, and my second channel, which is called Inside Home Built Workshop, right here.